Hello and welcome. Since we did a Baofeng tri-bander video, I figured I'd grab one of these TYT tri-banders and see if it was any better. And to be honest, I did not expect it to be. Is it compliant? The short answer, no. The long answer is it's complicated. It's a lot better than the Baofeng. In fact, this is close enough to compliance that it wouldn't make me nervous to operate this. You could probably get away with using this one just about anywhere. The Baofeng I would not use anywhere near a military installation because of the fact it's only 10 dB down on the second harmonic on 2 meters. We'll get to that in a minute. I've had this thing since yesterday afternoon, and it has literally taken me, what time is it? I've got about 8 hours into playing with this radio, just trying to figure out how to program it and get it to work. It has been frustrating. I will say this for the Baofeng. About a minute and a half after I had it out of the box, I had programmed in a couple of frequencies. This thing was a horror show to figure out. Despite the fact that there's a couple of YouTube videos extolling the virtues and how easy it is to program, I disagree. However, now that I have it figured out, I would probably just go with using the software that it came with. Real quick rundown here. You get the radio, you get the charger. If you buy it on Amazon and it comes from Let's Get Ready, you get the tri-band whip antenna, which is kind of nice. You don't have to keep swapping back and forth between the dual bander and the mono bander, 220 mono bander and the 70 centimeter 2 meter dual bander. Same cheesy plastic belt clip that the Baofeng had. I mean, I can't see that thing lasting for any length of time whatsoever. It does come with a programming cable, and it actually came with the software on a thumb drive. You don't have to go online and download it. That's if you're brave enough to load Chinese software on your computer. I do have an offline antique laptop, and that's what I ended up doing to get this radio to work. But it is kind of nice that they throw in the antennas. The manual, the Baofeng was actually pretty clear and a pretty easy read. This is not worth the paper it's printed on. This has got to be the worst manual I've ever seen with any radio ever. Some of the great features though, it's just, well, this has Roger beep. You CBR types love that. It's got a Roger beep on it. I mean, how can you live without a Roger beep? These two side keys down here are programmable as to function. We have 5 functions. The first function is no. I'm assuming that means it doesn't do anything. It just becomes a dead key. Second function is monitor. That breaks the squelch. That's kind of useless. Third one is scan, start and stop. That's useful. Did I say the monitor was useless? No, I meant it's useful. The breaking the squelch. I'm sorry, I'm talking too quickly here. I'm tired. I'm shell shocked. The monitor function is very useful, breaking the squelch, because there's no squelch knob on this thing. That makes me crazy. That makes me, yeah, I just want to rip someone's head off when there's no squelch function. You have to go into a menu on this thing to set the squelch. That's just one of those things that drives me crazy. However, having the button on the side that will break the squelch kind of mitigates that. Scan, start, and stop. Function number 4, scrambler. No idea. Couldn't tell you. The book doesn't even mention what it might be, and I went online, several of the videos I saw, nobody knows what it does. And function 5, emergency alarm. We all have to have an emergency alarm. Again, no clue what it does. There's no explanation in the manual at all. They tell you what the icons on the screen are. That's kind of useful. Oh, by the way, you get all 3 bands on the screen versus the Baofeng. You can only select 2 at a time, having all 3 of them there. And there is a nice feature. When the squelch breaks on any band, or you could have 3 frequencies in the same band, there's a little arrow on here. I don't know if it's going to show up. There's a little arrow, and it will jump to whatever frequency or whatever band the squelch broke on. That's kind of a nice feature. You can pick the radio, go up and say, oh, that was, you know, number 3 or number 2 or whatever. It's kind of a nice feature. Credit where credit's due, guys. It's got, you know, your standard menu functions inside. They're not bad to work with. Squelch, power, Vox, wide, narrow setting. Now, it's got a wide band and a narrow band setting. It doesn't say what they are. From what I can glean from online, the wide function is 5 kilohertz ham band, and the narrow function is like 2.5 kilohertz commercial band. I haven't checked that on the spectrum analyzer. I should get into that and find out. Frequency step, TOT, oh, transmit timeout, beep, ABR. That's the backlight, on or off. There's no timeout for it. It's set and that's it. Reverse, your standard repeater. Talk around, TA, function 11, talk around. No explanation of what talk around is. I have no idea what it is, and several of the videos I watched, nobody knows what talk around is. Tri-band standby, that's the one where it will monitor and jump between bands. That's kind of a nice feature. Transmit channel, okay, selection, CT, CSS, all your normal functions for that. It does have all the CT, CSS codes in it. DTMF, it does DTMF. It is alphanumeric. You can program names for your frequencies, but you can only do it from the software. Rest of the stuff here is pretty self-explanatory. There's a boot display, so that's where, you know, what comes up on the boot display. You know, the normal stuff you're going to find. But there is nothing in that book, nothing that tells you how to program a frequency into a memory channel. There is absolutely no information. One of the guys that did the video said, "Oh, it's easy. You just do this, that, this, that, this, and that, this and that, and this and that, and this and that, and there you got it programmed in." And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to remember that for about 3.5 nanoseconds. The only way I'm ever going to be able to program this thing would be using the software. Oh, and there's another thing. Most of your radios, when you program them by software, you program your receive frequency, set your offset, and you're good to go. This one, you have to tell it what the transmit frequency and the receive frequency are. There's no way to set the offset. You just plug the 2 numbers in. You have to actually put the transmit frequency and the receive frequency in the software to program this thing. You can buy the aftermarket software. There's several people that sell the aftermarket programming software that work with the ICOM radios and the Yaesu radios and yada yada yada. You're going to spend probably $36 if you buy it with the programming cable, and that's half the price of this radio. It's about a $76. I think I paid $76 for this. Just about twice the price of the Baofeng. I like the look of this radio better. It isn't great, but you know, it's a lot better looking. It doesn't have the real cheesy looking piece of aluminum screwed to the front of it. Got a better display in my opinion. Out of the box, couldn't make it transmit. I would push the transmit button and nothing would happen. I spent about 2 hours trying to go through the manual, trying to find out online. I figured there was a lockout feature somewhere that I was missing. After playing with it for about 2 hours, I grabbed it with both hands and pushed the push to talk button. Now, bear in mind, when I was pushing the button, you could distinctly hear it click every time you... In fact, let's see if you can hear it. You can distinctly hear it click. It's very distinct, but it wouldn't transmit. Put both hands on the push to talk and pushed for all I was worth, and it transmitted. There was no lockout function. The push to talk button simply didn't work. So I kept pushing it with 2 thumbs, and I mean, I had to lean on it hard. And eventually it got to the point where now it transmits. There's a little delay that's just built into the radio, but at least now it transmits with a fairly reasonable amount of force on the button. Vfo Memory button. I farted with this thing for hours trying to get the VFO function to work. Again, there's nothing in the manual about it, and I was resisting putting software on a computer. The Vfo Memory button just wouldn't work. It had a different sounding tone to it from all the other key presses. If you listen, oh, that's volume's down. Here we go. What the heck, did it get turned off? Let me go into the menu here. Roger beep is off. Let's see, different onset. Come on. Beep is off. What do you know? Okay, let's turn beep on. And enter. There we go. You can hear that tone when I press. Now it's the same on the Vfo Memory button. When I first got this out of the box and pressed Vfo Memory button, the tone was about 2 octaves down from that. It was a really low, like an error sound. It simply would not switch between Vfo and memory. And after playing with this thing for hours out of desperation, I loaded the software on my computer, hoping that, you know, oh, let me back up, change gears here. I went on the internet and I found a couple of threads where they said, out of the box, sometimes the Vfo Memory button doesn't work. What you have to do is a factory reset of the radio. Well, they didn't tell you how to do the factory reset. They just said you have to do a factory reset. Terrific. Nothing in the book about it. They didn't mention it on any of the videos. So I tried all the normal tricks. You know, hold the button down, turn the radio on. I tried all the buttons. Then I tried different combinations of buttons, different key presses, figuring I could find a factory reset. Then I tried holding 2 buttons down and turning the radio on. I spent an hour and a half, 2 hours trying to get this thing to factory reset. That's when, out of desperation, I put the software on my computer. Figured maybe there's a reset function in the software. Loaded it all up. Oh, that's another adventure. It's all in Chinese. So you better be familiar with Windows dialog boxes where, you know, yes and no and continue and cancel, where all those functions are on the dialog boxes that pop up, because it's all in Chinese initially when you're loading all the software in. There is a video on the thumb drive where a Chinese fellow, it's probably the guy who owns this company, Let's Get Ready. There's a video on there, and his name, this gentleman's name is Bob Yuan. So I'm assuming he's Chinese, and I'm assuming he's the, you know, guy I hear on the video. He does do an explanation of how to load the software and what buttons to push. But again, it shows it's all in Chinese, so you kind of have to remember what buttons he's pressing. Anyway, loaded the software, got it up and working. Once it's in there, you can convert the programming software to English. There is a button for that. And once that's done, then you have your common functions in there. Did a few things in it, dropped it on the radio, disconnected the cable. None of the buttons worked. Absolutely none of the buttons worked. I couldn't make it do anything. You know, previously the menu button had worked, the up and down buttons had worked, the band button had worked, enter and exit buttons had worked. Nothing was working. Went back into the software. Now initially, the way the software comes, it only has 1 channel loaded. So I said, let me try loading up 3 different channels, 3 different frequencies, loading up the bands, and let's see what happens. So I entered 3 frequencies, downloaded that to the radio. Everything woke up. The Vfo Memory button worked. Everything that had stopped working was back functioning again. So if you get one of these, be prepared for an adventure. It took me a while to get this thing up and going. How do you like the little charge light button? Evidently that means charged. It says it turns green when the battery's charged. I've never seen it lock green. This is the same type of functionality that's on the Baofeng. I think there's nothing in there but a Zener diode reference for the LED. And when the battery voltage gets to a certain point, it changes the color on the LED. How much of a charge control circuit is in this? Only God knows. You know, it probably just keeps charging continuously. I would monitor the thing. As soon as it starts blinking green, get it out of there so you don't overcharge if you buy one. Okay, I'm going to, as you can see, we have pretty much the same setup here that we did last time around. We've got the pass-through attenuators, same two attenuators, same setup on the spectrum analyzer, and we'll take a look at the second harmonic and third harmonic components from this radio, which I will say are much better than the Baofeng was. So let me get the other camera in front of the spectrum analyzer. Okay, here we are set up for 2 meters, and I'm going to key up the transmitter. And as you can see, oh, am I on the right? I'm on the wrong band. Excuse me here. There we go. Now we're on 2 meters. There we go. That looks better. As you can see, the second and third harmonics are much, much better on this radio. The Baofeng, well, here's what the Baofeng looked like. The Baofeng was between 10 and 13 dB down. We'll call it 11 dB down. Remember, we're supposed to be 60 dB down on our second harmonic. What we're looking at right here is, this is 54 dB down from our fundamental. Now that's far enough down you could argue it could be my equipment and my setup. I mean, this is so close to being compliant at this point. And this one is 58 dB down. Now I believe it's non-compliant. I believe my equipment, this spectrum analyzer, my other spectrum analyzer, and my Hewlett-Packard signal generator, which has a calibrated output, all agree on levels within plus or minus about 1 dB or better. So I've got to believe that my analyzers are very close. Granted, I'm not a Cal Lab and I don't spend thousands of dollars every year to have these things calibrated, but I do A/B comparisons between the three, and when all three of them agree, I'm pretty comfortable that I'm pretty darn close. So here we are. This is 2 meters. We are down 54 dB here, which is pretty close to compliance, and 58 dB here. Remember, we want 60 dB down from the fundamental. This is far enough down that it wouldn't worry me to operate this radio. I don't think you're ever going to get bothered with it. So let me, again, here's what the Baofeng looked like. See, you can see how much higher the second harmonic is on this baby. I mean, it's just horrible. I wouldn't operate this thing anywhere. All right, let me convert over to 220. Okay, here's our scan at 223 megahertz. Our second harmonic is 58 dB down, which is pretty darn close to the 60 dB. And our third harmonic is 54 down. Now the Baofeng actually wasn't bad here. The Baofeng was 56 dB down at the second and 53 at the third. But this one beats it. This one is certainly better at these two harmonic frequencies. Oh, I had one of the commenters say that my comparison on the last video wasn't fair because I used a monobander to demonstrate what a good 2 meter radio looked like, and yet where I was comparing it to a tribander. I heartily disagree. it was a fair comparison. You're either compliant or you're not. Because you're a tri-bander does not give you a pass on harmonic compliance. You're either good or you're not. Just because you're a tri-bander doesn't mean you get away with being bad. You're supposed to be within the 60 dB limit. And the Baofeng only being 10 dB or 11 dB down on the second harmonic at 2 meters is non-compliant, period. Doesn't matter what I use for a comparison. Okay, so that was 220. 58 dB down on the second, 54 on the third. And I know somebody's going to call me because when I key up, they're saying, oh, but it's reading 60 dB up there in the upper right hand corner. Yeah, 60 dB is the level of that signal compared to the minus 60 dBm, excuse me, is that signal compared to the 2 dBm of the fundamental. Remember, you're supposed to be 60 dB down from the fundamental. So it's only 58 dB down from the fundamental. But again, very close. And it could be argued it might be my equipment or my test setup. So I'd almost have to give that a pass. Now we'll set up for 70 centimeters. Okay, here we have the 70 centimeter band. And our second harmonic here is 57 dB down, within 3 dB of being compliant. And the third harmonic is 51 dB down, but that's up in the 1.2 gigahertz band. You're not going to bother anyone up there. The second harmonic's 860 megahertz. I'm not even sure what's in that part of the spectrum, but again, you're so close to being compliant. The big concern with the Baofeng was that second harmonic on the 2 meter part of the band. So this radio, if you can put up with all its foibles, and you know, the jury's out on that one as to whether or not you think you can live with that, actually probably isn't a bad radio. Again, it's twice the price of the Baofeng, and you can see the difference. You know, when you have a better radio, you get, or you know, the more you pay, the better the radio, I should say. Okay, this one was, what I say, 57 down on the second. The Baofeng was 53 down, and 49 on the third. It was 46 on the Baofeng. So this beats the Baofeng on every band, and a full 5 watts out. I don't have this one set up to read that, but I did check it. It's the full 5 watts out on all 3 bands on this radio. So they didn't lie about that. And their harmonic, let's see what they say in the book here. Okay, the book claims that they are better than 65 dB down on their second harmonics. Now, you got to take that with a grain of salt. Could this radio be 65 dB down? Probably is possible if whoever is working on these at the factory took the time to adjust the filtering on the output or did a little tweaking. They could probably get there. And manufacturing, you know, what I'm seeing here could be written off to manufacturing variables. You know, they have a couple of test radios they set up. They beat the 65 dB part by hand tweaking them, and then the rest of them just fly through the production line and you get production variations. So these guys may have actually had a compliant radio, and they may have actually gone in front of the FCC, but that Baofeng for 36 bucks, I don't believe it. For that price, and from what I've seen and heard on those radios, I don't agree. Okay, this radio tested well enough on the transmission or transmitter side, and I figured I'd take a very brief, crude look at the receiver. I'm not going to set up my mobile test set here for a full SYNAD test, because they don't even list what it should be. They just say sensitivity is less than 0.2 of a microvolt. Now normally that would be, there would be 3 of them here if this was a decent radio, and they would be, you know, by band, and it would say 412 dB signal to noise, SYNAD. However, what I'm going to do is a real crude test here. I'm going to set the squelch at, let's pick a number 4. How's that? So we'll go in here, and you can hear we're receiving something. Menu, and where's squelch? Come on, I know it's one of these. Whoop, there it is, squelch. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a squelch setting of 4. And enter. And we're at 0.35 microvolts right now, and we have nearly full quieting. We're breaking the squelch, obviously. Let's lower the amplitude down to 0.2 microvolts. And we're still easily breaking the squelch. Now we got a little bit of white noise on the signal. It's kind of to be expected on the 70 centimeter band. Let's try it on the 2 meter band, 146.52. So we'll go frequency 146.5. Oops, backspace dummy. Frequency 146.52 megahertz. Bang. Broke the squelch easily on a setting of 4, and by 0.3 microvolts we're full quieting. So we're pretty close. I'd say that's fairly decent. We'll try 220 while we're here. What the heck? 225 megahertz. And change bands. And there we are at 0.2 microvolts, which is their spec. I mean, the fact that it's really popping through the squelch, anybody at 0.2 microvolts, you're going to hear them. Let's see how far down it'll go before it would become unreadable, actually. Oh, okay, so we lose them there. So 0.15 microvolts, which isn't a bad number. You'd hear whoever's hollering at you, breaking the squelch on setting number 4. So that's kind of impressive. So if I was going to buy one of these cheap radios, I would go with the TYT. Oh, by the way, I can't do an IMD test because I only have a single signal generator. I just put a bid in on eBay for a second one of these so I can have 2 signal generators, so I can generate two carriers. I do have a mixer splitter here. What I'll have to do is get some what's the word I'm looking for? Isolators. I need a couple of isolators. I'll have to buy a couple of isolators to put on there so that the two don't interact with each other here. Run it into a combiner. Then we can do an actual intermodulation distortion test. Probably won't do it on these radios because I won't be able to get my hands on one of these and the isolators for a while. But if I win the bid on this, then I'll start buying up isolators. They're not cheap, but if I'm going to be doing these types of reviews, I should get serious about having the equipment here to do the full range of tests. I can do SINAD, signal to noise. I can use this guy right here. I can also do two-tone tests. I can do everything, you know, with your transmitter to do all those tests here and your receiver. But again, I'm not going to bother setting up, finding all the cabling to set this up this afternoon for this thing. That test is good enough for this radio. It will perform. If you're going to buy one of these, even with all the problems with the software I had. This radio won't get you in trouble. Oh, another thing you should know about these, they don't have a 12 volt input anywhere on them, and I find that extremely annoying that you can't feed this thing with 12 volts to operate in the mobile. In fact, there's a business opportunity for somebody. You could make a clone of this battery pack that had a 12 volt or had a power supply in it that put out the same voltage as the battery when fed on 12 volts. And this is 7.4 volts, 1600 milliamp hours they claim. I doubt it. It doesn't weigh enough. But there's a business opportunity for somebody who wants to sit down, design a back for one of these that'll run on a 12 volt supply from a cigarette lighter. There's probably going to be enough of these sold. In fact, you probably check for the rest of the TYT range and see if they have a 12 volt jack, and if not, make backpacks for all of them. You can pay me 2 cents per unit for the idea. How's that? I'm the radio mechanic. See you soon.